Hey guys, Tristan and Troy here, back with another podcast. It's been a minute, but it's good to be back. Have a lot to talk about today. We're a little late, but I still think it's worth at least discussing a little bit PSA shutdown, how maybe it's affecting what you're thinking about. Probably maybe just your quick thoughts on these new grading companies as well. As we film this, there's some big news. We had some big games from Steph, Jamal Murray, unfortunate injury. It's looking like. And then we're going to get into as well. We're going to talk about Zion's recent performance. I think that's interesting. We're going to talk about the legends cooling off. These guys, Kobe Bryant, LeBron, cards are down. And we also are going to answer. We had a really nice viewer question, so we appreciate it. He was asking, what do we think about the high pop counts of guys like Luka and Zion and Ja, and how much do we weigh that when we're investing in guys like that? So really appreciate that question. And also, real quick, before we get to the intro and everything, this podcast is we are officially out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So you guys can listen. We're bringing the good stuff. We're getting real official here. So would really appreciate subscribe. Probably easier for most of you guys too, because I bet you a lot of people just kind of listen to it. So want to make that a little bit easier on you guys. But we'll get into a lot to talk about today. Really excited. But first, the intro. It grows on me every single time. Every time it gets a little bit better.
The one thing that's bittersweet about that intro, kind of off topic, but I feel like I can't move any of those cards now, whether it's trading or selling. I feel like I'm now more emotionally tied to them than I was before.
You'd be a phony too, isn't that? It's technically fake flexing. We got some cards in there that you don't own.
We'll get a message from someone saying, "Hey, that's my card." I don't know why that's on.
Yeah, exactly. It's good though. But yeah, like I said, literally we sat down to film this, and I think Curry and Murray kind of two stuff going on happening as we film. So what are your thoughts? I know that's kind of broad, but what do you think?
I was watching. Really unfortunate injury. I think I'm obviously not a doctor. I don't know what happened, but I think there was a non-contact injury to Jamal Murray. It looks like his knee buckled. So I won't say anything yet, but it could be tragic because that is their second best player and a super promising young guy. So prayers out to him and his family. Then on the flip side, Steph just went nuts again. I think he had his 9th or 10th 50-point game ever, put up 53, had 10 threes. I saw this list that came up. It was like players with double-digit threes, and it was like Steph at 18, Clay at 5, and like the next highest person at 3. So kind of crazy that he got over 10 again. And, he's kind of like the only reason why I could tune in and watch Warriors basketball, especially with Wiseman down now.
Yeah, so it's interesting with Steph because there was kind of that narrative, is he the best basketball player in the world? And then like the Warriors struggled after KD left a little bit, understandably, and LeBron looked so good that I think people kind of forgot. They're like, oh, Curry, I remember when we said he was the best basketball player in the world. And it's like, no, Curry is legit. Like he is that guy. There's something to be said for him turning it on when he feels like it and being like, I'm scoring 50 tonight to prove a point. So I mean, just more and more just shows us, how special he is. And no wonder, like, we won't get too far into Warriors talk here, but it's like, man, they gotta put something on the court around him because you can't like waste having such a special player.
Yeah. I mean, he could be the single or, second most impactful player of our generation. And there's something about the gravity. Like it doesn't have to be, he doesn't have crazy rebounding numbers or he's not blocking shots. But the gravity alone is so scary for teams to guard. I think, when Steph has it going, there's nothing you could do to stop him. And, he's commanding like 3 people sometimes. And this is despite, Draymond Green and Juan Toscano-Anderson and Kent Bazemore. And I love all these guys, but there's a lot of like people that can't really contribute on offense, if it wasn't for Steph. So I think, not to beat a dead horse, but it truly is special watching him play. This year kind of is a throwaway year for, from the Warriors standpoint, especially with Wiseman now could be out for the year. super big blow. Kind of a side note, but where are you at with Wiseman, from an investment standpoint?
It's interesting you said that. I last night for the first time ever, I was looking up prices of rookie guys because I was seeing, Wiseman, and I think it was his Prism Silvers right now raw are like I think $120, $100, and I was like, you know what? Even maybe not even as an investment sake, I'm totally down to buy a Wiseman Prism Silver for $100 and see what happens. Then I was looking at Halliburton and these different type of guys, so. It's unfortunate to see him go down. We talked about it just in our group chat. I was like, man, I'm not going to lie. I haven't watched every single Warriors game, but I just tuned in for like a quarter or two. And I was like, man, Wiseman does not look good out there. And that is by no means like any type of analysis at all or my feelings on him as a player. I was just kind of surprised. Like he looked like a rookie, which he is, to be fair, but it was just, it was interesting.
Yeah, he definitely has moments where he gets bullied. When he's playing defense, he's getting bullied. He's jumping, missing. He's trying to block the ball, but kind of like taking himself out of the play. And then on offense, fumbling the ball. Doesn't really know where to position
He looks like
himself.
a freshman in high school, which is kind of like a rough look,
Yeah, but like at the same time, to have someone who's like 7 feet with soft touch, good footwork, like I feel like the building blocks are there. It's weird that he kind of had a really promising like first month and then totally tailed off. Got in, rolled his ankle. And it seemed like even Steve Kerr was kind of tired of people just asking about, Wiseman and his struggles. Like he felt like he had to give a report card every single game, and there's a lot of pressure on him. So I feel like maybe him being out, as long as it doesn't bleed into next year, it could be a blessing, for him to get his body right, put on some muscle, and then come back. Because next year is the big test year with Clay back, Wiseman taking a step forward. The gang is back together next year, so there's kind of no excuses at that point.
Yeah, I mean, with bigs always too. I mean, it's to be expected that they're going to develop a little slower. So I'm trying to kind of reserve judgment on him a little bit there. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see on another kind of, I guess, negative note. You touched on it, the Murray injury. The Nuggets look so good. Aaron Gordon, we did mention it that we both actually played against him in high school. So we've always kind of kept an eye on his career. Moving to the Nuggets, they look really, really good. They hadn't lost since he moved there, I believe.
Yeah, they won 8 in a row, and then they just lost to the Celtics and now the Warriors. So won 8 in a row, now lost 2 in a row. But I think, with Jamal Murray going down, it totally, changes the tone of this conversation. But I think they were just starting to look like a real contender, especially with, the injuries to the Lakers and, the Clippers not totally putting everything together. So I think, Jokic is still so special, and I think they kind of had too much firepower in the sense that, like, I think now, if Jamal Murray's out, I think MPJ is totally capable of stepping up into a bigger role. I think they have other guys that can do it. Aaron Gordon, I think, could take a bigger role. Will Barton, he's a scorer. They have a lot of pieces that are still solid NBA players. It's tough to lose your second best guy, especially someone who carried them for long stretches last year in the playoffs. But, I don't know where I stand with the West Coast. There's a lot of good teams. Even the Mavericks have been playing really well recently. And if I was the 2 seed or the 3 seed or wherever the Mavs end up, I would hate to play Luka in a playoff series. When he has it going, he's as scary as anyone.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you never want to take joy in someone's injury, and I definitely don't. So I'm just making that clear. But I think MPJ to the moon when he plays without Murray, it's a whole different, like him and Murray actually until now, really, they have not fit that well together. So I just think his scoring will go up a ton, and they need it to if they're to have any type of success. I have some Murray cards, so it's unfortunate. Once again, there's much bigger things in life than cards. So I'm just making all that stuff very clear, but it just kind of reminds you of the risk of it all. Because like I've heard a lot of people too, especially I've pointed it out on my channel, that people are talking about the cycles and riding the waves and all that stuff. And it's like it's easy money until it isn't. So until the cycles change, until someone, gets traded or gets injured or something. So it's just always like the getting's been good for lack of a better word in the card market lately. So it's just kind of a reminder once again, like there's I guess the card market is definitely the least of his worries, but you just hate to see it regardless. But it's just like something I don't know. I was just looking at all these playoff guys I have, right? I'm like, Donovan Mitchell, easy money. Jamal Murray, easy money. Kawhi Leonard, easy money. But you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. I think it reminds me of a couple years ago when I had a couple of big Durant cards for myself at the time, and I was watching him come back against the Raptors, and I thought, wow, this is nuts. Imagine if they come back and win, and then he was down an instant, torn Achilles. That's like supposed to be a deal breaker. Granted, like the market has probably gone 5 or 10x since then, so it's kind of a weird, it's a weird timing. But like if that were to happen now, there's no saying what those prices would be. And I think, like you said, it's kind of a sobering, it's a sobering thought because it's easy when stuff's going to the moon, like you're saying, when like the market is doubling, every month, or you have players that are playing well and their cards are going up. It kind of feels like there's no end in sight. Sometimes it takes like an injury, or getting traded or just not playing well. These prices can come down just as fast as they came up. So especially for the less high end stuff, which is kind of an interesting balance. We could get into that in a different show, but just juggling what cards you're actually picking up, because a lot of times it's the base stuff or the stuff that has higher pop counts that drops quicker. Sooner and quicker and more drastically. Sometimes, you have a card that was 400 and it could drop to 200 and, within a week.
Yeah. I mean, I just think we just got to always frequently remind ourselves that, like, I think a lot of people, especially people who really pretend to be geniuses, it's like, if you had bought, I'd have to double fact check myself here, but I'm pretty confident that if you had bought Marvin Bagley when he got drafted and sold at the beginning of the season, you would have been up money, at least on like his Prism Silver, Prism Base. Like that just kind of shows you what it's been like. So just a reminder that not everything goes to plan. But and once again, prayers out to Jamal Murray and his family. There's much more important things than card investing. We understand that. We're just talking about it through that lens because that's what this show happens to be about. But on a more positive note, I want to talk about Zion and his performance lately. Insane. I mean, it's surprising, but it's also not. It's not like his progression was like from being garbage and then it's just like, he was averaging like 20 points per game, and now he's kind of moved into that high 20s, or low 30s territory. It's almost a natural progression, and that's kind of what I've been saying this whole time.
Yeah, but the thing is, and like I was kind of one of the skeptics because I didn't see. And it still remains to be seen whether or not he can carry this load for 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons in a row. And I'm not trying to be the cynic. That was the skepticism was that people didn't see him averaging 27 for a full year, and I was one of them. So I think I can now safely say I was wrong. He's been relatively healthy the whole year. He's not only as efficient as he was last year, but he's more efficient. He's like 60-something% from the field. The other day he was just 16 to 22. The kid is totally unguardable, unstoppable with the ball in his hand. So I think, like you were kind of always a Zion believer. So this is kind of the natural progression, but not everyone saw that. And I think that's why we saw his prices cool off. But he is just scratching the surface because he still hasn't totally put it together on defense. Still totally, like, I don't think they have a great roster around him. They have guys like Bledsoe and Steven Adams, other people that don't really space the floor for him. So I think we're just kind of hitting the beginning of the Zion saga, and hopefully he stays healthy because it could be super fun. He's so dynamic. I've never seen anyone like him.
Yeah, I agree. He's special. And that actually reminds me, I'm interested to get your take on that. So I think we talked about it a little bit when we were doing the budget thing. So, but I recently bought like a good amount of Luka and Zion because like they were down a ton. And I guess my thinking is just like, I don't think I'm going to regret it in the sense of like, oh man, I should have waited till the off season. Traditionally that would have been the case, but like, I don't know, just with where their prices were at, for some reason, I just felt comfortable with it. I'm curious to see what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you picked them both up, 2 or 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think you've probably already done well. I think Zion stuff has been rising pretty substantially in the last couple months, especially in the last month, because he's been scoring close to 30, I think, in the last whatever 10 games that he's played. So I think you've already done pretty well, and I think with Luka, I think that the Mavericks team has a chance of of upsetting or at least making some noise in that first round. So I think you'll do well in the immediate future, and then 3-4 years down the line, I think you're going to do fantastic. Those are the next two guys. The only thing, I know this is something that we talked a little bit off camera, but the population count is something we have to think about. I was thinking about buying some Zion myself. I'm just looking at the PSA population reports right now. So his silver prism, he's got 3,600 graded, 1,200 are PSA 10s, and 2,100
we'll throw it up.
PSA
We're
9s.
jumping around a little bit, but let's throw up the question since we're getting into it. This was the viewer question. So yeah, I mean, no better time to get into it than now. We believe in guys. Well, I don't mean to speak for you, but at least it sounds like we believe in guys like Luka and Zion, but their pops are higher. So it's something to take into account. So I apologize for interrupting.
No,
Go ahead.
You're good. I'm rambling, but I was looking at it and he's got 3,600 graded by PSA, and that's the silver. That's not the base. That it's so high that it makes me wary of buying that particular card. I've already seen that card, jumped around from 1,500 up to 4,000 or 5,000, back down to 1,500. Now it's probably, I don't even know what it's at now, but I think it's around 2,000, maybe a little more. There's so much fluctuation when you have that high of a population. So that's the first thing I would say. But the second thing, it's still a small enough population to where in 5 or 10 years, I think if Zion really is the real deal, if he's a top 2 player in the league, those cards will be few. Like, it'll be harder and harder to come by those cards because you're gonna have collectors that pick them up. I saw that with Luka stuff. People immediately was like, wow, there's so many 2018 Luka base. Like, why would you ever buy that card? And I saw that card go from $100 to $1,400. So I don't think, population is the end all be all. It's usually when you have a card that has 3,000 or 4,000, in circulation, it's the quickest thing to drop, when that player does, scuffle a little bit. So that's the first thing I would say, when it comes to Zion specifically, but something that it's another factor, right? Along with a bunch of others.
Yeah, I think I would agree almost fully with that it's another factor. It's not the end all be all. I mean, I've had people say to me like, oh, I'm buying this Jason Tatum Revolution insert. It's low pop, man. There's only like 70. I'm like, that doesn't, I mean, it matters, but like, that's not the end all be all. It's low pop because no one really wants that. So don't fall completely in love with the pop reports. To answer the question, how much do you take into account high pop when investing in guys like Luka, Zion, Ja? I take it into account. Especially, we talked about the silver, but like the Luka base population is absurd. And that's like definitely played a strong, factor in it. Like, I think it's like 25,000 and probably rising. Probably will get over 30,000 at some point. So, but once again, it's not as simple as like, okay, Luka has, I'd imagine double the population of like maybe a Booker or someone like that. That doesn't mean that the ratio should be double. You know what I mean? Hypothetically, if Luka was equal to Booker, Booker's price should be double. I'm not sure that's exactly how it should work. So it plays a factor, and I consider it. But I guess once again, it's good to do research. It's good to know pop reports, but I don't think you should be making your decisions purely off it. Once again, if Luka and Zion become what we think they will, people are going to want those cards, and they're going to go up regardless of the fact that their pop report is higher.
Yeah.
Last thing, and I know he didn't really ask, we talked a little bit about Wiseman actually. Now that is just a feeling. It's not based on any data, but when I see how many like Prism hanger boxes and stuff are like the PSA is paused right now, but when I just think about like how many base Wisemans are out there, it's just going to be an absurd number. So
yeah, I think LaMelo had his Prism PSA 10. One ended at 1,500. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did you see that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's really expensive. It's like the first one.
Yeah, it's super expensive. Obviously, within the first month, you don't want to be the first people pulling the trigger on that, unless, if you don't really, if money's not an object to you, then, grab it by all means. But I think it's pretty straightforward that prices drop within the first 6 months, and then you'll start to see exactly, where they level out at.
Yep, 100%. And I think most people probably have a good idea of that, but it's always good to a reminder. Like I don't think there's really any rush. If you believe in LaMelo, especially with the PSA shutdown, like I would definitely not be rushing out to buy that PSA 10, which is, kind of, I guess, a good segue into the other thing we want to talk about. I know we're a little late, but PSA shutdown, it happened I think hours after we filmed, so we just kind of missed it. But your thoughts of what's happening with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the first thought, from a selfish standpoint, I do have I think 30 cards with someone who did a group submission. I did get 4 or 5 of the more expensive ones back, because they did, the expedited expedited service for those. So I'm happy about that, but I do have some caught up. So, personally, I am affected as if it's a big deal. I've been waiting on the cards a little longer than I thought I would be. But overall, I think it could be a positive just because they're taking it seriously. They're trying to get all the inventory graded and back distributed. But the fact that it coincides with them raising the prices is kind of, I don't know. I'm not that big of a fan of it. I think, they're definitely leaving the door open for another grading company to potentially step in. But PSA has such a huge head start. I have a hard time believing another company is going to get close to them.
Yeah, and it's tough. You mentioned those new grading companies. I actually got a comment on. I talked about it a little bit on my soccer podcast, and they were like, I wish someone would give a real opinion on CSG and HGA rather than just saying they don't know them. And I was like, okay, fair enough. Kind of lazy analysis, but it's like, I don't know anything. What am I supposed to literally, even if I really did some amazing research, I'm like, I cracked a PSA 9, I cracked a PSA 8, and I have the ratio 2.3%. It's like, still though, that's only 2 slabs. That could just be luck of the draw that it came back like that. So it's like, that's what it is though. It's totally unknown. And I've heard people saying oh, HGA, they do this, they do that. It's like, we have no idea. And for me, why would I send any card I believe in just to CSG or HGA? I mean, that's kind of a unique take, but it's like, why would I do that? Those slabs mean nothing to me because I don't have that information. Yeah, I believe in SGC because I said you can watch one SGC reveal on YouTube and you'll see right away. It's like, man, they grade hard. They do. And just from, what is it, anecdotes? It's not data, but people are like, hey man, SGC grades hard. I've seen people crack 8s and get 10s at PSA. So if I was to do anything, I do SGC. But yeah, what are your thoughts on kind of these? I mean, Beckett as well. People have asked me about Beckett. I'm like, I just wouldn't send there. I just wouldn't do it. Why would I do that?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of different companies over the last 4 or 5 years, and I've seen, some pretty crazy stuff with some of the lesser known companies where you have, a PSA 8 cracked and it gets a 9.5 in another company. So I think I've always kind of, stayed away just because I know what I know, and that is PSA and Beckett. To your point, I've heard a lot of good reviews from SGC in the last 12 months, which I think is big because at a certain point, it's not just going to be PSA, especially, if they can't even get through all the inventory. But the real iconic cards, like big cards or thicker cards that have autographs or patches, I think you do want to stay on the straight and narrow. It's safe to do PSA or BGS because you're going to be able to have comps, right? You're going to have other people that sold cards in a similar grade. It's going to be a lot more straightforward. If there's going to be in the next 2 or 3 years, I think we're going to see movement. I think we're going to probably see, an SGC or an I don't even know the other ones you mentioned. You're probably going to see a couple different companies come up because I think that's just the nature of the business. It's expanding so fast. There's so many cards that need to get graded. And I think at a certain point, there's going to be a couple different grading services that do a good job. But for now, it's been PSA and Beckett. I'm actually very curious. Have you graded with SGC yourself?
I have not sent anything to SGC. I have not, but I've been a big buyer of their slabs. Actually, I mean, I was just gonna say I have that SGC Ronaldo rookie sticker, and I was saying man, I believe in SGC, but I know it's gonna be a B word to sell that because the debate over it's an 88 So it's like I think they did the number, so that means it's like a very high 8. So it's like, people are gonna say like, oh, it's a PSA 8 though, it should be worth more. Versus like I have no like it's gonna be an argument whenever we try to sell that, excuse me, to get a certain valuation. But I've bought some SGC 10s and those cards look flawless. I like the slabs. People always say buy the card, not the grade. But I don't know. I just think I was like, what matters is that card in there, especially if you're going to hold it for a while, is good. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm just going to wait for PSA, especially I've been picking up like vintage soccer and stuff. I know that's kind of a little bit of a tangent, but it's like PSA is just always going to have that value. If you had an SGC 7 or an SGC 8, like especially with vintage, well, I guess with vintage they actually have a reputation, but I don't know. Just with those type of cards, I'm like, even if I get a PSA 7, I know I can sell it for a pretty good number. If I get a SGC 7, I don't even know what I'm going to do with that. Like that's going to be a hard thing to move. So just something to be consider, and that's kind of what I'm personally doing. And also, like you mentioned, having stuff at PSA, I have over 500 cards there right now. So selfishly, I definitely want them to kind of speed it up here soon.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, and I think it's probably hit other people harder than us. I know there's people that make a living on buying raw, large amounts of cards, getting them graded, bulk service, getting them back a couple months later, and moving them. So it's definitely slowed that service down, but it is what it is. That's what happens when you have, I don't know what it was, hundreds of thousands, I think in the millions. I think well in the millions in terms of how many cards they have there. So they'll get through it. Maybe they need to hire a couple more people.
Yeah, I don't know. I've talked about this a little bit before, but like I think it's the lamest thing in the world when people criticize how other people enjoy the hobby or what they invest in or all this other stuff. But when I saw people submitting or selling Trae Young optic second year inserts hollow for like $100 just because it said 10 on the top, I'm like, that kind of makes me angry. Not angry, but I was like, it did kind of bother me. I was like, there is something to be said, like junk slabs. Like what people were submitting was garbage. Like it was garbage. And that is part of the issue, because you get a 10 on the top, even a 9. People are like, oh, LeBron James, and it says 9. Like that's worth $40. It's like, I don't think it should be though. I really don't think it should be. Like, I don't know. We won't dive into it, but I've always thought like I said, that LeBron James mosaic 15th year, and it happens to be pink, is worth $200.
Right.
And I could
10 times more than like the $20 raw card that sells.
Exactly. I was like, I would just much rather give me a BGS 9, give me an SGC 9 of something that actually means something. And that I just think it should be worth more. And that's just personal opinion. I don't get to dictate the market, but it'll be interesting to see. Like you said, I think the people really made money on that, especially before, when you could bulk submit and get it back. And I know at one point it was like 2 months, and it probably even, not too long ago, maybe like 4 months, but it's not really a viable strategy now. And also
it's been almost 12 months since mine. So, in the next year, we'll probably see it speed back up. I'm hoping. But it is more expensive as well. So, that side hustle that people had is definitely going to be slowing down. And, I think people were trying to get into that, and it's going to be a little less realistic. And you're going to need to pick your spots. You can't just buy 100 raw cards and expect to do really well on them. And maybe you could have done that before.
Yeah, it's really, it's kind of gone. Like some people have said they think raw prices are going to go up. I was saying, especially on the low end stuff, I think it's going to go down. Like, for instance, I just know my own experience. I was buying like Michael Porter Donruss base just because I was like, oh, I'll grade it. It's $100 card in a PSA 10, get it for like $5-10. I'm like, who is buying that now? Like, who would buy? What are you buying Donruss base for? Are you going to flip it like raw? So I don't know. I imagine there's a lot of opportunity. But then again, it's like you have to wait to grade it. Is that even an opportunity at that point?
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, but there'll be stuff that slips through the cracks. It's an interesting time. I was even saying, like, I made a video and I was talking about, excuse me, oh, man, excuse me. I was talking about like RJ Barrett. If you invest in RJ Barrett, I was like, because there's literally 100 million different products out there, you can get a numbered RJ Barrett that'll slip through the cracks on eBay for cheap, like an Illusions or something. And it's just like, is that garbage though? Or is it like, oh, it's still a numbered card? And so it's an interesting time. Like, I think I've always said people who pretend to like, this is good for grading, this is bad for grading, this is all this type of stuff. It's like, it'll be really interesting to see how things shake out. Because even a year from now, we're going to be in a weird place. It's going to be way different.
Yeah. Yeah. To your point, there's so many variations and inserts and different cards especially for these new guys. And then you have on top of that, the 2,000 or 2,500 or 4,000 prisms that are in, that we can see. So there are a ton of products. You have to be, if you're buying these younger guys, you need to be extremely careful. You need to be extra careful because it's easy to buy. You buy a Steph, LeBron, maybe you overpay a little bit now, but I think in 3 or 4 years, it's safe. Maybe you didn't double your money, but you're not going to lose your shirt. But if you're not careful and you buy one of these young guys when they're hot, the products that are easily available are usually the ones that are quickest to drop as well. So, RJ Barrett, that's not necessarily a bad time to be buying him though. He's having a pretty solid year. The Knicks look good. They definitely can make some noise next year. So I think if people are smart with young players, they could do well as well.
Yeah, that's actually a good transition on what I wanted to talk about with the legends dropping, of just being careful of this LeBron good, RJ Barrett bad. Like, that's not how it works. Like, I was looking yesterday, LeBron James tops Chrome down 50% from his peak. And I was like, there's someone out there who bought in at $50,000 because they're like, oh, people are saying it's LeBron. It has to keep going up. That's what people are saying is the safest thing there is. And you you've lost $30,000. That's real money.
That's Troy. The one thing you can sleep easy is no one watching your channel bought that card for $50,000.
Oh, no, of course not. If they're listening to me, anyone who listens to my channel, man, our investment group we got going, we're up 5-10x, man. We're just printing it. We're printing it over there. No, but all jokes aside, I've been looking at like LeBron and like even Kobe. Kobe's down 50%. So I'm just like, at some point I'm definitely going to be buying. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it just goes back to your point. You have to do your own research. I think it was the safest investment to be buying LeBron and Steph 12 months ago, but unfortunately, we see these guys, they go up 4 or 5 times, and you can't tell anyone to buy that card, because that Topps Chrome that was 50, was 2,000 or 3,000, and I saw it when it was 2,000 or 3,000. So it's painful when you have the legends that go up that much. Allen Iverson got his prices cut. Like you said, Kobe had his prices cut. Wade had his prices cut. So a lot of the legends cooled off. A lot of the young guys cooled off too. But you can't be the person caught holding the bag at the end. Otherwise, you're going to be losing money. And it's not just easy. Like, we kind of take for granted how often we're looking at this stuff, just because, at least for me, like, this is fun. I enjoy 100%. Going on eBay. I enjoy seeing how I'm doing. I enjoy seeing like, okay, I like this player. Let me just monitor his prices for a couple months. Like, for me, it's a hobby, and that's why I kind of don't look at it as a job. But there are a lot of people that just have money and want to get invested, but they're not going to do their due diligence. So those are the people, we need to caution and say, hold on, be careful. What can happen in the next couple months? And then, where was that card a couple months ago? Because there's also shilling. Like, that's just a fact. There's cards that get bid up and then never paid for. So there's a lot of factors. It's kind of a weird market. We're talking about buying slabs of cardboard. So it's not like, a stock exchange, which sketchy stuff happens there too. So I guess it's a very roundabout way of agreeing with you. I don't think there's any one way you could say one player is good, another player is bad, because these things change on a weekly basis.
But I guess to be more specific with the question, would you, because you don't own too much vintage, actually, if I'm not mistaken, is that something you would think about going into now soon? Yeah,
I think I would. I've sold off some stuff in the last month, and I'm actually looking to make some plays this off season. I think I'll probably split my money. That's kind of usually what I do, is split money between vintage and younger guys that I like watching.
Yeah. I'm definitely something I'm going to think about, but I remember when that hype was so like crazy of buy the GOATs. I can't believe we ever bought John Morant and these type of people. And I was like, I guarantee you, I think I even said it, I was like, a month from now, people are going to be looking at their Allen Iverson and Tim Duncan rookie cards. And I love Tim Duncan for sure, but people are going to be looking at them and they're going to be like, I think I'm going to sell it. Because it's just like,
there's no relevance.
Yeah, you just
Where's the
look at it
cultural
and it's like,
relevance? Like you had the Jordan documentary that came out, during peak COVID, and
yeah,
that definitely was part of the price run up for a lot of these things. So, the younger guys are like John Morant. He's having a pretty down year, but there will be another time where he's relevant. Luka,
yeah.
that's going to come sooner than you think. So I agree with you. I don't think it's always just the end all be all by the GOATs. Historically, I think people have done well, doing that. I just think we're kind of in a new time where these great players that have been historically great and underpriced are no longer underpriced. And that's just the reality of it.
And also one more rule. Two rules that I'll leave us with before we go is like zig when others zag. I mean, that's the easiest one. But also people keep asking me about this card and this card, especially in soccer where things have done crazy. And I'm just like, if it's gone up 6 or 7x already, almost without exception, there will be a pullback. Like you don't see it go up, even if it's the GOATs. Like I said, even if it's Michael Jordan rookie card, even if it's LeBron, if it goes up 6 or 7x, like there will be another opportunity for you to buy. So just something to think about, regardless of the name. Just I'm always wary if like everyone's talking it up. Just be careful. It was the same thing with the GOATs. It was the same thing when everyone was buying Darius Garland and Roy Hachimura at the beginning of the season and saying like, oh, he's undervalued because he's going to be playing in the Olympics. It's like, if that's what everyone's thinking about, just use your head, use your own common sense. You'll probably be all right. But we'll leave it there. Once again, Apple Podcast, Spotify. Please subscribe, guys. If you have any questions, drop them down below. I think I remember the name of the guy who asked about the pop accounts. It was Gregory Wolf, I believe, on YouTube. So thank you for
Greg.
Yes. So if you want to be featured as well, make sure to drop a question. We'll be sure to answer it. All right. Thanks, guys. Peace.